Good. Okay, so we'll kick off then. And the first one is called Evening Prayer. And this is an absolutely wonderful portrait. We've got this intense expression. It's got beautiful light. The detail is incredible right through the image. The color palette is very complementary, again, right through the image. And this is the sort of thing that I'm trying to tell you from the outset. There's no point me trying to do a critique of this image because it's absolutely brilliant. And there's nothing that I can say that will make it any better. So that's the first image called Evening Prayer.
And that's by Joe Knight, I seem to remember.
Cheers.
The second image is called Fairy Lights. This is really well executed as well, because if they are fairy lights, they have been so well, they look like ribbon. And I'm sure that that's the impression that the author of this image wants to leave us with. But I think it's been brilliantly executed. A very effective sort of center of the image, with on my computer showing a slight vignetting around the edge and just this concentration in the middle. But I think it looks so well that it's been done with light. Goodness knows how it was done, but it's been done brilliantly. I like it very much.
That's mine,
8. Hot springs at sunrise. They just get, you know, I'm not saying they get better and better because it's not better than the previous one, perhaps, but it's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, it's a wonderful landscape image. It's sharp, detailed. It's got subtle lighting in the sky, which is captured nicely in the reflections. I think the composition of it works very well. What's not to like about this image? It's a really stunning landscape with, I say, these cold, snowy scene, but with this warm light in the sunset and the reflection. Another really stunning image. I don't know whose it is.
I think it might have been one of the walkers.
No, it's Annie Gibbon.
Sorry?
No, it's not a Walker's.
Oh, okay. Annie Gibbon. Annie Gibbon.
Annie Gibbon.
Apologies.
Sacre Coeur is the name of this image. Illuminated from the base, this image gives the author the opportunity to capture the textures in the building with this sort of light. I think the fact that it's a square image, the monochrome, and I assume it is. I mean, it might just be the fact that it's white light on it, but it's a monochrome image. But it's very sharp throughout, and I think it's been well captured. We don't have any converging verticals on this image. It is a good capture of this church. Sacre Coeur is by,
Unless somebody contradicts me, I think it might have been Keith Snell.
Venice at Night. I wanted to say this is St. Peter's or St. Mark's or whatever, but it's the Basilica di Santa Maria, I think, when I looked it up. This is an accomplished image insofar as the shutter speed has been slow enough to allow the boats to just gently move in the water. And that movement is well captured, which also has smoothed out the water. So you've got these slightly muted reflections of the light, but at the same time, you've got crystal clear, very sharp detail in the building. And since this image was sent to me for another competition, I've got a fairly good suspicion that this is Julie Walker's, and it's a stunning image.
Yes, you're right, David. It is mine.
Just as this one is. Devokewater Boathouse at Night. Now, I didn't know where that was, but it's the largest tarn in the Lake District on Berker Fell. I said you'd be not only entertained, but informed and educated. So the title doesn't mention the sky, but I mean, the sky is beautifully captured with the Milky Way, and the light is well distributed through this image. Clearly, when you're taking such starry skies, the temptation is to paint with light the foreground images or something like that. But this is light all the way through the image, as well as having this very wonderful starlit sky. So all in all, it's a really very well accomplished image, and that's Devote Water Boathouse at Night by
Aid Gindley.
So you see what I mean? Any one of those so far could have won an open competition, and I'm quite convinced about that. This next one is called From Bradnor Hill. I can only assume that this has been taken with a telephoto lens to foreshorten this landscape, because there are field after field after field with hedgerows and trees, and then you've got this recession of the landscape with the mist throughout, and then this subtle sky, just enough of it at the top of the image. So I mean, I don't know where Bradnor Hill is, quite honestly, but it's obviously a very, very good vantage point to take a landscape image. But it's been really well captured, and on this misty morning or this misty evening, and I don't really know which it is, but it's another stunning image.
Can you tell us where that is, Bob?
It's in Herefordshire.
Herefordshire.
Yeah. Just up from my father-in-law's house.
Right. And was it a telephoto shot?
Yes.
Foreshortened, yes.
300mm lens.
Yeah. Thank you. And this is Solway Sunset. And what a dramatic, amazing cloud formation, a dramatic sky. And I know that it's easy to criticize the color of these, but we've all been out on some occasions and seen really vivid red clouds after sunset. And I think this is just one of those occasions where the author has captured a very unusual cloud formation, but with this really vivid color. So after dark it is, and that's another, good skyscape. And I don't know whose it is, but it's Solway Sunset.
Phil Cartwright.
Phil Cartwright. Tawny owl hunting at dusk. Now I saw the comical side of this image, because I can't help feeling that this owl is going to bounce this mouse on there and say, "Who's the naughty boy now?" Then it seems it's looking at the author and looking at the photography here in the eye. It's a perfectly sharp image. I mean, it's really well captured image, but it's just the way that this owl has got hold of this mouse, which incidentally has got catchlights in the eye of the mouse as well as in the eyes of the owl. But who's the naughty boy now? I couldn't get it out of my mind, which is a shame, really, because I've taken away the seriousness of this image. But it's still a brilliant one. Absolutely stunning. Tawny owl hunting at dusk.
That's mine, David.
Alan, sorry about that assessment, Alan, but it's got an element of humor in it for me. But then we've got an alert little owl, and again it's piercing eyes looking straight at the author, but it looks better on this projected image than it does on my laptop, to be honest, because the detail in this hole in the wood that it sits in is shown off to even better extent now that it's projected onto this big screen. But it's in monochrome and it works particularly well. It's just another very sharp image, presumably after dark. It certainly looks like it. But what's not to like? It's really a very good image, and that's a very alert little owl by.
And this is here, I think it's Pete Wielden.
I think it's Pete Wielden too.
After the light comes the dark. It's an interesting title. It's a perfect circle on a perfect square, and that in monochrome, and I presume it is, because it's very difficult to get the color in the moon unless it's one of those red moons. But the detail on this, I think, is quite amazing, because you can physically see the sort of topography, if that's the right word, if you look on the edge of the circle of the moon, you could see the Scawfell Pikes and the Blencathras on it almost. You know, I mean, it's really a very, very detailed photograph of the moon, and yes, it's in stunning detail, and it's a really well captured photo of the full moon, and that's by
David Raymond.
sorry, David Raymond.
David Raymond.
I didn't know this was Bethlehem till I read the title. No idea, never been there. But it's nothing like what I would have expected of Bethlehem. I've got this manger in my mind, and it's shattered an illusion of what Bethlehem looks like now. But it's a really it's a competent cityscape picture, really. I think that. Sorry. At the back of the, I've no idea what it is. I think as a you know, as a composition, it actually would benefit by having the bottom bit cut off. If in all honesty, I think that the bottom left-hand corner is not only a very cold but bright light against the warmth of all the other lights in the picture. So I think, you know, a bit off the bottom would actually enhance this image. I'm not sure about the building in the center at the very top of the city. I'm not sure that detracts from the image at all. It's almost the highlight of it, perhaps, but certainly the bottom bit, I think, could come off. But it's a revelation.
I seem to remember that's David Layton.
David's not here. So I can say anything really, can't I? Saturn has got 146 moons, apparently. I thought we had one. And this just proves how wrong you can be. This is called Blood Moon Eclipse. So it's a lovely composite image. It's a very good idea. It's been taken with a very good foreground and background of the Lakeland Fells. And again, there's light right through the landscape part of the image. So it's this series of images has been taken whilst there is still some light on the fells. I don't know which way round it is. Do we start off with the red blood moon and then the eclipse takes place, we finish up with a very white moon, or is it the other way round? Because I seem to think the moon goes that way round. And it starts at the left. Yeah.
Tom? Yeah, starts at the left.
Oh, it's Tom Stenhouse. And I didn't realize the blood moon would be the completion of this, that we would start with a white moon and then move to the red moon at the end of the eclipse.
It's an approximation of its path.
Right. Okay. But it's a really interesting image. Again, this one's also brighter on the screen. This works well with the projector, I think. It's called Chester Stars, and I reckon they're the same as the Borrowdale ones, personally. But it's just that we have cloud in the way mainly, and so we don't see these very often. But again, whether this is a single or a very long exposure image pointing at the pole star, I presume, and waiting for this this movement of the stars, well, however it's done, it works very well. And we've got this beautiful light and a very nice landscape image at the bottom. Now we have got converging verticals here, but I can't imagine how you could possibly do anything about that, because if you tried to straighten the image, then the star formation would be distorted. So I suppose you're between a rock and a hard place in trying to straighten up those. But the effect and the light in the background of the house and the general lightness of the image works extremely well, I think.
That's Simon Roberts.
Cocktail hour. I like this because it's just dark enough for the effect of the lighting in the restaurant and on the the outside area of the restaurant. It's dark enough for the light to be effective, but light enough to still get the area around it. And I like it as well because the characters who are sitting outside they all seem to have a story to tell between themselves too. And then there's the character on the very right-hand side of the image who's turned around to look at the photographer. And shortly after this image was taken, he got a punch on the nose, I would imagine, because it just looks like he's not very happy, doesn't it? But I think that this, again, it's called After Dark. It's not too dark, but it's dark enough, and it works very well.
That was either Ted or Wendy.
Cocktail hour. This is Dancing in the Dark. Now, I seem to remember this being taken because I took a trip to Amsterdam of KPS members a few years ago, and I've got a sneaking suspicion that because the event in Amsterdam was the Festival of Light, so we took lots of photographs of light and in various shops and streets and whatever on this trip, and there were the three characters in front of this installation really set it off from being a not particularly effective part of the Festival of Light, but suddenly it became very much more so once you added characters to it. And I seem to remember that this is Roland Harris's image, because I think I may have seen it when it was at the time of the trip. Is that right, Roland? I didn't realize I'd send him to sleep so quickly. I do my best to keep people awake.
I'm back, yes.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Roland. Dark sky over Buttermere. Well, I've seen this picture before, and so I know who it is. And if you buy the Cumbria Life magazine this week, you'll see this, because it's Fred Bell who has been successful in having this. It's a friend of the Lake District calendar, and this is one of the featured photographs. And I can understand why, because it's a cracking photograph. I think he's stolen Tom's blood moon to stick in the top right-hand corner, but he's captured the light. There's the wonderful landscape silhouette in the background, and the illumination of these grasses and the tree in the foreground. And it's a very well balanced image. The dark, the dark red light emerging from the top of the silhouetted landscape really does look a treat. And so not only is it good tonight, but it's going to be good right through the calendar next year if you want to buy one. Well done, Fred. Returning to the river before the sun comes up. How many viewers have just said "Dum, dum, dum, dum," as they've seen these two hippos walking across the screen?
Just you, David.
Just me? Is it just me who just saw the owl doing that as well, folks? A minimalist image, because notwithstanding the size of these creatures, they still form a very small part of the image, but it works very well. We got this this line of grasses across which these hippos are walking, and the recession of light from the dark pink sort of skyline through to almost white at the top. And even though they are small in the image, I still think that works incredibly well. And it's a very interesting image, and probably is after dark anyway, because they tend to be in the water when it's light. And that's Returning to the River by...
I think that's yours, Alan.
Mine, yeah, thanks.
Well done. Thank you. Deco. As with Sacré-Cœur, this is a building illuminated from the ground upwards, and it gives it emphasizes the detail when you've got this this light slanting across the building, and it's been very well caught because a lot of detail in this image. For me, it does suffer because there's an opportunity with this image to open up the top of the image and not have these converging verticals. And whenever the camera is pointed upwards, you always get them, and unless you've got a tilt and shift lens, then you're going to have these converging verticals. And it looks a bit too much of a convergence for this to have worked particularly well. It would be better if a bit of manipulation to square up the image, but there's a lot of detail in it, and it's well taken. And that is Deco, as in Art Deco, no doubt.
I believe that's Richard Petty.
Forest Dawn. This is a really delightful sort of fairy tale image. I love the way that it's been constructed, and the fact that you've got this light penetrating from the back of this forest through the trees, and then this bluey mist until you get to the foreground of these beautiful autumnal colours, and lots and lots of detail, lots of effect, and I think it's just a beautiful photograph, or construction if it's not a single element. And that's Forest Dawn. I think it's a beautiful picture.
Somebody remind me?
Any idea whose it is? No?
It's Joe Knight. Sorry, I couldn't unmute.
It was Joe's.
Joe Knight. Well done. Sunset over the lagoon. I think the position that the photographer has here, by look or judgment, is really well, has been really well taken, because the light is just behind this what is it, church, chapel, or mosque, I don't know, but the building, and it emphasizes the outline of it, and they've got the light shining through it, but it's also captured by the two spires, one on either side of the image. So I think that the framing and the composition of the picture works really well. The sky itself is very, very interesting, right up to this, what I was going to say herringbone, but it's probably, that's not a mackerel sky, is it? I don't know. But that interestingly patterned cloud that runs across the top of the image. I'm not sure you need so much of the water, to be honest. In fact, on my screen, I sort of blacked it out, and it emphasizes the landscape a bit more. And I think that the image is stronger for taking out some of the foreground water. But nevertheless, I think the composition of the image works very well. And is that sunset over the lagoon.
That was mine.
Full moon and singing nightingales, Tuscany. Now, I didn't get the audio file with this, so I've been trying to imagine. My imagination isn't brilliant, and I can't hear them. But nevertheless, this is an interesting image with the full moon there, giving the warm color, and everything else being fairly muted, with that cloud just weaving its way across the moon. I'm not sure that the building in the bottom left is adding a lot to this image. In fact, I think it'd be better without it, really, because it takes your eye down to the bottom left of the image rather than looking at the image as a whole. There's not an awful lot of detail in the landscape. It is a fairly muted landscape. But I think since this is an open competition, I would have been tempted to move that building further into the frame so that I wasn't having my eye drawn out of the frame by it. And that's full moon and singing nightingales in Tuscany. And perhaps the author will bring the audio file.
That's Carol's.
Funchal night lights. I'm fairly confident this is Keith's. He's not around today, so I'm going to say what I like about it. I like it. The intentional camera movement here has worked particularly well, I think, because despite the movement in the image, it hasn't destroyed the coastline. The landscape content is still very clearly defined. And I think if this had been done a bit too vigorously, we would have lost that definition. But it's retained the definition and has made those lights very interesting because of the way that they've been elongated. And he's still managed to capture the sky and the evening, the sunset over Funchal. So I think that's a really good image. Harvest mice out late. It's a very interesting picture. It's another a bit like David's moon in a square. This is, we've got the moon in the square again. I think circles in squares, they've clearly worked very well. And whoever chose to put these three blind mice in front of the orange moon on these two ears of wheat, I think have done very well. Everybody likes to see three. Marilyn keeps telling me it's got to be odd numbers all of the time. We're planting plants and everything else. So three blind mice in front of this warm moon works well.
Fred Bell.
Fred? Hayden Valley sunset. Again, I don't really know where Hayden Valley is either, but even with these warm colours of the evening reflected in, from the sunset, reflected onto the underside of the clouds, it still looks very, very cold place to be. But the reflection in the water is muted but beautiful. A lot of detail in the image. There's a great sky. You've got this footpath through the snow, which seems to have been snowed over. But I think it's a really interesting landscape image, and the light really sets it off very, very well. The Hayden Valley Sunset is by
Bob Given.
Bob Given. Well done. Homeward Bound. On a similar theme to the that we had a bit earlier, but with elephants this time. The monochrome treatment is fine because they're all silhouetted. We've got these sunbeams, I presume, coming down through the sky. So I'm not sure that it's after dark if the sun's that high, and maybe it's moonlight coming through the clouds. But in any event, I think that that band of light across the top of the image detracts from the quality of the image somewhat. And if it were taken out completely, it would improve that picture because you don't need it. You'd still have these bands of light coming across the image down onto these elephants. So I think a slightly more panoramic format, taking that bit off the top and a bit off the bottom, it would make for a better image, but it's still interesting. And that is Homeward Bound by
Mike Kidd.
Mike Kidd. Hopscotch Alley. When I looked at this, I didn't look at the title. I just thought it looks really threatening. Whenever you get graffiti along corridors and walls and alleyways, you think that there's going to be Bob Given or some other dangerous person in Belfast sort of lurking around the corner. And the last thing that you expect it to be called is hopscotch, that children play during their school break. It's really a strange, it's just, I mean, you can see the hopscotch drawings out on the pavement there, but I don't know, it just doesn't go with that environment at all. You think of hopscotch and children, and you think of this alleyway and a place of danger. So it makes it even more interesting for me, and it's been really well captured. And this couple just walking through, I thought they were holding hands. They're pretty much doing. I would imagine that in truth, they're just wanting to get out of there. I think it's a cracking picture. That's Hopscotch Alley
By Richard Jacobson.
Yeah. It's not in Belfast then, Richard. So Alan wasn't, Bob Given wasn't there after all.
Definitely not.
Inside Sin City. We've got this mono image with just the punching blue light and of their eyes and the red lips. And inside Sin City is giving us a clue as to what the author is portraying in this image. But I don't think she looks sinful at all. Quietly contemplative. She's got her hands in this almost angelic sort of pose. And then there's just this brooch in the highlighted, as well as the flesh of her hands and her face. But it's a very, very clever image, I think.
Have you seen the film, David?
No?
Not my image, but if you've seen the film.
Oh, you need to see the film Sin City, do you, to understand this image rather more comprehensively than I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I still think with this light shining through these shutters onto her face, it's a really very clever picture. And
I think it's Anne Healy.
sorry,
Anne Healy, I think.
Anne Healy.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. Okay. Lamplight. Isn't it funny? But you look, as soon as I looked at this picture, I thought the one light I really want to be on is the one that isn't on. The fact that there are 3 lampposts all illuminated is good. But I really want to see the lighthouse, if that's what it is, illuminated too. So not only is the light missed, but even the road misses it because it veers off to the left just before it reaches it. So I mean, I can understand this image being taken with the lines leading up to it, up to this lighthouse. But it would be nice, I think, if the author had managed to put a light in the lighthouse. It would have improved the image considerably. I think as well there was an opportunity to really make that cloudy sky much more dramatic, with much more contrast and darkening it down. I think that image could be made could be improved with a bit of work on it quite considerably. I don't know whose it is. Lamplight.
Ted and Wendy here. I seem to remember it was Ted's.
This is late night shopping. Well, this really interested me, this picture. I think it's Marilyn Monroe in that bottom cover picture. It's Winkeltje Dutch for little shop. And apparently there is a game which is called The Little Shop, and you build a little shop. And it's based on that name. And it's a fantasy shop, and it's a fantasy game. I only knew it because I just looked at what Winkeltje meant. So I don't know whether this is real or it's the fantasy shop. But what appealed to me was that it's a bright color image with all of this incredible detail inside the shop, but it's monochromatic around the outside with these either gargoyles or masks, and the monochrome images around the right-hand side and across the bottom of the image and up the left-hand side. So a lot of effort has gone into creating this impression. And I think it's, though very, very busy as an image, it's very interesting all the way through. So I like it very much. So late night shopping is
Possibly Wendy's.
possibly Wendy's. Lofoten Night. Another beautifully atmospheric sky with a wonderful shape of the mountain as the main feature within it. That color of the sky is beautifully muted and very interesting. And the reflection is even more muted in the water. There is enough interest in that water to keep it all. And I think it's a well-balanced picture. And with that stunning light framing that mountainous island or promontory, I just think it's a very strong image and a very interesting one, and one that captures your attention for a long time. Lofoten Night is by, no idea.
Either David Layton or Keith.
Yeah. Is it Iceland then?
Lofoten's
No, it's
Norway.
mine.
Norway.
Hmm?
Oh, is it?
Sorry, it's
Oh,
mine.
I apologise.
There you go.
Gosh.
All right. Sorry,
it-
Annie. Lulworth Cove. And I think this is quite a spectacular landscape image. The sweeping line that goes all the way round this panoramic view, I think, is really quite gorgeous, and the light on it all the way round is equally so. You've got the setting sun and the illumination of the cloud. It seems soft enough for it to have been a long exposure, and there's an intensity of the light that's reflected in that bay, in the cove, with those boats at anchor, and I just think it's an absolutely stunning image. That's Lulworth Cove by
Tom Stenhouse.
Tom Stenhouse. I'd realised it was Tom's. Apologies. Right. I think this probably will be the last image before coffee or tea, and it's called The Waiting Bride. I think we've got some strange, sinister characters in Keswick Photographic Society that produce images like this. All with the only colour in this image are the red eyes of this ghostly bride that seems to have been constructed by the use solely of hash marking of the face of the veil, and set in this graveyard. Even if it wasn't after dark, it's sinister enough to feel as though it was after dark. It's just a weird and wonderful compilation. And the posy that the bride is carrying looks like dead flowers as well. I think that's quite appropriate in the circumstances. Not as, I mean, it's sinister, but it's not as dramatically contrasty as perhaps it could be. But I don't, the Waiting Bride is by
I believe Anne Healy.
Anne Healy, we think. Okay, so I think The Waiting Bride will have to wait until after the coffee break before we get on to the Newcastle Quayside. Thank you very much, folks. So this next image is the Newcastle Quayside. It's a sort of a classic shot of this wonderful bridge, illuminated with the varying colours which are reflected in the background of the image, and the sage to the left of the image there. The exposure's been handled very well. I like that starburst light coming from the top left there, and the one just at the end of the arched bridge. I think that you're never going to prevent that white lights in such an image being burnt out, but if you can create that sort of starburst, you get away with it very easily. Again, it's one of the images that could perhaps have a chunk of the bottom of the image removed without losing any of the character of this image, but it's very well held. And that's Newcastle Quayside by
Anybody claim that?
somebody.
Yeah, we think it's David Layton.
Night fishing. This flashlit nighttime capture of a heron and the fish with a fast shutter speed, capturing these droplets of water just dripping off the fish that's just been pulled out of the water. The background is nicely muted. The bird is very sharp and reflected in the water. Plenty of space in front of the bird, and it's a really well captured natural history photograph. Night fishing by
That's mine.
Julie Walker.
Julie Walker. Now, the educational bit rather than the entertainment bit is this noctilucent clouds. And such a cloud is an unusual after dark phenomenon where no doubt the sun, though past the horizon and after sunset, is shining into a cloud that's quite high in the sky, producing this this white cloud. I think it must be quite a rarity for the author to have chosen it as a subject. It's got an interesting foreground, and receding through the foreground to that dark after sunset glow just above the horizon. I'm not sure we benefit from that dark bit of cloud at the top of the image, to be honest, because it is about that white cloud and the after dark effect of it, with the horizon and the color of this afterglow. But it's an effective image. But I do think that bit of cloud at the top doesn't add anything, probably distracts a little bit. Noctilucent cloud.
Not yours, Carol. By our resident meteorologist, Carol.
Orkney sunset. Another dramatic sky with the even a bit of blue in the top left of the sky there showing through, but a heavy cloudy night with the sunset and the sun illuminating the bottom of the clouds and reflecting in the either the sea or a loch, whatever it might be, inevitably pointing your camera at the sun, even at sunset, is going to be difficult to hold that light. And on this occasion, that reflection and the sun itself setting is really quite badly burnt out. And it's a pity, really, that it detracts so much from what otherwise is a very interesting sunset. Perhaps it could be cloned out a little bit. That's Orkney sunset.
Phil
Right.
Cartwright.
Philip Cartwright.
Peel 1 a.m. Wherever Peel is, if indeed Peel is a place. But what a stunning capture of the Milky Way this is. That tree just in the right-hand side of the image really holds it nicely, I think. And the Milky Way sort of points down at that tree, which is in turn illuminated by that back slight light, what's the word I'm seeking here? The pollution, the light pollution in the background. But that light pollution sort of helps this image rather than hinders it. And then you've got the mist over the lake, and the landscape of the fells, creating that beautiful frame. I think it's a stunning picture. I love the way the Milky Way has been captured, and I love the light on the green, and in fact light all the way through the image. None of it is blacked out or blocked out. It's a cracking picture. Peel at 1 a.m.
That's by Richard Jacobson, and he tells me it's of Crummock Quarter.
Come on. Red sky at night. Is that the second noctilucent cloud we've seen of the night? Or is it a distraction? And I think it's the latter, which is unfortunate, really, because I don't want to be looking at that white patch at the top of the sky when the aim is to show that beautiful reflection or the illumination of the bottom of the clouds by that setting sun, which is just half covered by low cloud in the distance, and you've got this foreground housing and trees. So the image itself works very well, I think, but for that white patch at the very top, which it adds nothing and becomes a bit of a distraction to the image. Red sky at night.
Unless somebody tells me different, I think that was either Ted or Wendy.
Roosting peacock. Well, the peacock found the perfect bit of angled wood to stand on for his roost, as it's diagonally across the image. It's just purely the silhouette of this peacock and the silhouette of this log. I don't think it works particularly well for me. I think it seems a very heavy chunk of tree or branch or whatever. And I think that the bird is quite small in the frame. I think the idea of having the silhouetted bird and having a fairly minimalist picture works very well. But I just think that it's a bit small in the frame, whereas this wood that goes diagonally right across the whole picture is very heavy in the frame. So I think it could be reduced somewhat so that the bird is larger. That's Roosting Peacock.
That's mine.
I'm going to get demoted after this, aren't I? But then some B Sunset. A bit of ICN, no doubt, works very well. Insofar as you've got these beautiful different warm lights coming down through the image, down to the blue, and even the very foot of the image, you've still got reflections of some warm tones from the sky. And you've got these sort of almost pencil-like points as each of those clouds is reduced from this band to a point. I think that works incredibly well. And I think this band of colours is very, very effective. And that, I don't know by whom, but it's St. B Sunset.
We think, Keith, unless somebody says different.
Starlings coming into roost. Not a murmuration, but it probably was a few minutes earlier. I'm sure there was a murmuration before these came into roost. So there's a strong storytelling value in this one, as well as it being an after dark. I think that there are about 973 birds, and every one of them sharp. Clearly, despite the lateness of the hour and the darkness of the sky, that must have been an incredibly fast shutter speed to have captured all of those birds, each one of which has a sharp wingtip. I think the capture of that is incredibly good. They drop down into the security of the grasses. And so this is the storytelling value of this image. And of course, they do it at dusk. And you've got that lovely cloud in the back demonstrating just when this image was taken. So I think it's a really cracking picture. I like it very much. That's starlings coming into roost, not a murmur.
Carol Minks.
Yeah, lovely. Sunset on Glaramara. No, not that actually. It's sunset on the Mara. Even I knew it wasn't Glaramara. It's a sort of picture which you could imagine being on the front cover of a travel magazine. I think it's a cracking good image, not only of the in terms of the coloration and this setting sun just disappearing over the horizon, but nicely framed by that tree. But you've got the receding light from the front of the image through the landscape itself. I think it works really, really well. It's a very effective image. Just needs a giraffe. So that's sunset on the Mara.
That's Mike Kidd's.
Mike Kidd. And another one, but this one isn't Glaramara, it's Causey Pike. Sunset over Causey Pike. Taken from Latrigg by the looks of things, because we've got Derwent Water there, shown in the left with a little bit of reflection of the sky from the setting sun, and this pathway leading, perfect leading light to from the bottom left corner through to that the right third, and then that wonderful snow frost covered range of mountains with the glorious cloud and the and the colour from the setting sun. It's a great landscape picture, I think. And that snow just on the side of the footpath as it leads up to the top of Latrigg, I just think it sets it off a treat. It's a cracking good landscape image.
Fred Bell.
Fred Bell, well done, Fred. Fox checking for food. Well, we all know that the owl has just taken it, don't we? What a wonderful expression on the face of this fox as it sort of looks at the top of that stump and then looks at the author enough to say, didn't you say there was going to be some food here? There's a real look of disappointment in the face of that fox, but it's really well captured. The light on the fox and the light on those grasses that frame the fox, I think is fantastic. I think it's pin sharp all the way through. The grasses and that's on the same plane as the fox are all nicely sharp throughout. The colour tones are cracking, and it's been very well set up. It's a lovely picture. Fox checking for food, notwithstanding there's none.
I believe that's Pete Weldon.
Clearly a composite. Oh dear, isn't it such a shame that idiot has destroyed a beautiful landscape that we all love. It should be hung up by something. But here we are. Here's Sycamore Gap with that lovely bowl in which it sits. And I have been there, but I haven't been there when we've had such a lovely cloud formation as that, with the light coming through at sunset and setting it off a treat. And of course, there's an emotional attachment to this sort of image now. And it's so sad that from here on out, unless you live to be 300, you're not going to get another picture like that. That's Sycamore Gap.
Tom Stenhouse.
Took me ages to understand why this picture was called The Crow, because I saw the tree and the light and the tunnel through the image, and I was so fascinated by that light in the bottom third of the image, and the tree and these lovely light beams coming through. I thought that was the picture in itself, and it wasn't until I really began to look and see the crow was sat there. And of course, it does set the image off, or at least it finishes off the image. It's the icing on the cake of what is otherwise a really lovely forest picture. I like that very much. It works. So that's The Crow by,
We think, Anne Healy.
thank you. The Cygnus Wall. Doesn't look like a wall, but it's a cracking picture. When I first flicked onto this picture, those stars were twinkling at me. And it just looks like that. It looks like you're really looking at the stars. The more you look around the image, the more those stars just twinkle. And I know that Richard has explained to us about how much nearer this Cygnus Wall is than some of the stars that we gaze out at really are. But to put that picture together in the way that it has been put together, I think is incredibly effective. And you just can look through it and look around it and see all these colours and textures. Whether it's after dark, of course, is another thing. It may have been taken after dark, but I reckon since it's several light years away, there will have been lots of days there as well, won't there? But wonderful, wonderful image. And that's called The Cygnus Wall.
And as you'll have guessed, that's by Richard Jacobson.
8 against 2. That's not very fair, is it? If you look at the colours of the tops of the jerseys, there's only 2 of them. The one that's tackling the young fella here and the one behind him. No wonder they're losing. But this is after dark. You can see it's a floodlit rugby match for these boys. Great expression on the around the mouth, in fact, of the chap who's making the tackle, and of the head immediately behind him, who looks rather disappointed it wasn't him. And this real effort to score a try. I think it's a very effective sporting image. I'm not sure we need all of it, but nevertheless, the real action is these 3 kids in the foreground with the supporting cast behind them. Nevertheless, it's still a very effective sporting shot, and it's very sharp and well exposed right through. And the background is in no way an interference to this shot. It's sufficiently muted to not exist, really. So really good sporting rugby shot. The rugby at Ravenhill, or mini rugby at Ravenhill.
That's mine.
Bob.
If you go 2 images back, if you could, just please take it 2 images back, and then 2 images forward. You know, you've almost got the same. You've always got the same construction, only this one is several light years closer to us. But the effect of this is equally stunning, I think. It's a really good sky. The colours and textures from the deep blue of the sky in the top left, and the sweeping line of the clouds, and this big hole in the clouds being filled by the cloud as it's making its way across that gap. And then you've got all the textures and shapes of the clouds within that sweeping circle. I think is really effective skyscape. And that is Turbulent Sky by
Phil Cartwright.
Philip Cartwright.
Phil Cartwright. Is it Val d'Aosta at night? I don't really know how to pronounce it, but it looks like Val d'Aosta. I didn't know where it was, so I Googled it. And I saw more than 100 images of this place. And not one of them was at night. And that's because everybody who is sane wouldn't be that high up at night. They're all down there drinking in the pubs below. But whoever's taken this has decided to be on the top of a mountain at night, which is a bit scary. But what a lovely picture as a result, because you've got the light and the warmth of the colours of the lights in the valley. But then you've got this wonderful landscape highlighted across the top, all these snow-covered, is it probably Dolomites, I don't know, across the top of the image. And these 2 triangles from the bottom right and bottom left, leading you down into that valley. I think it's a very, very effective, image. And that's Val d'Aosta at night by?
That's mine, and may I reassure you, it's from the terrace of an agriturismo, so there was no hardship involved whatsoever.
Valencia Moon. Well, it's an interesting starburst moon, but this architecture within Valencia is phenomenal, isn't it? There are so many wonderful structures to photograph, it seems, but this one has been photographed really very well. It's almost like there's some alien fish swimming frantically towards you with those fins sticking out the back of it, and the sort of the nose of this creature coming the photographer's right smack in front of it. And there are these two, whatever they might be, trees sticking out the top, either side of it, plants of some description. But it's a lovely piece of architecture, and it's very well captured and well illuminated throughout, and sharp, good reflections. Nothing wrong with it, really, is there? It's a lovely picture. And that is Valencia Moon. So the moon is a tiny part of that image, I think. And that's by
Is that Annie?
Yes.
Annie
Yeah.
Given.
Annie Given.
Venice at night. Another really well handled nighttime image of urban landscape, with this reflection of the bridge creating this circle in the middle of the image, and the reflection within the canal, the leading lines from both right and left converging into that interesting part of the image, with the really subtle colours from pink and pastel yellows and pastel pink and reds, and the dark sky in the distance. And I think that's another really well handled, well captured image. No converging verticals. And that's Venice at Night by no one.
Anybody own up to that?
Anyone?
We think it might be David Layton if people don't up to it.
Wall Street After Dark. Absolutely incredible detail in this picture. I think the image has been taken with a slow shutter speed to get this wonderful smoothed out water in the foreground, with every one of the 10,000 windows quite sharp, and these leading lines taking us into this cityscape. How on earth that the author managed to get everybody to put their lights on in every building for this picture, I don't know, but it really does work brilliantly well. I think it's a stunning image, and it's just so sharp and so well constructed. It's just a joy to look at. That is Wall Street After Dark.
I believe that's Alan Walker, is that right?
That's correct.
Wild tawny hunting in the rain. Well, that'd be a different mouse, wouldn't it? The fact that the title of this image is Wild Tawny, because I presume is to demonstrate that, you know, this it might be a staged setup with the flash available for the take, but waiting for a wild bird to turn up and then to capture it in that pose just before it takes this mouse is nevertheless quite a feat of not necessarily good fortune, but skill by the photographer. And I think that to get that as sharp and as well posed as that, for a wild bird coming in for this this mouse on that wonderfully sharply caught branch in the rain, I just think is a cracking picture. I mean, I didn't think they hunted very much in the rain, but clearly when they're hungry enough, they will. So that's Wild Tawny Hunting in the Rain.
Again, I think that's Pete Wheeler.
Dining Out. We've had a similar image to this earlier in the evening, which I mentioned was just dark enough for the lights to be effective, but light enough to get all of the information around it. This is a very similar image, but it's just not as interesting for me insofar as the other image. We've got a lot of interaction between couples, some of whom were looking towards the photographer, whereas nearly everybody in this image is either sideways or have got the back to the photographer. So the storytelling value of it isn't quite as strong. There's just the one person there that's looking at photographer sitting in the middle of this image. So it works insofar as it meets the definition, but I just don't think it's got quite the quality of the storytelling that the other one had. And that's Dining Out.
And that's either Ted or Wendy.
Evening Rush Hour. I suppose these are sort of Marmite pictures, really. I've heard so many people who, you know, love them and so many who hate them, and very few people who are quite ambivalent about them. I like the fact that this author has captured an emergency vehicle driving through as well, because we've got this dotted blue line going through the city, as well as the tail lights of all the cars and vehicles that have gone up to the traffic lights, and all the headlights coming towards us. So a very slow shutter speed, but lots of real crystal detail in the buildings and in the lampposts. And I think the whole thing works incredibly well. I like it. I find it very, very interesting. I do like Marmite, and I like this picture. Evening Rush Hour.
Oh, all right, that's yours, Joe.
It is Joe's, yeah.
Joe Knight.
Joe Knight.
Riders at Dawn. Is it about the dawn or the riders? And I think that they're both pretty strong in this picture. But for me the two characters on horseback, they look a bit wishy-washy, and the sky doesn't. The sky looks really effective. This dawn light reflected in the wet sand, and it looks like the author of this is standing in the water, I think. But anyway, the reflection on the sand, the sky, and the landscape, the mist in the background, and I think the whole structure of that works well. But I think that the two riders and the horses, I would have liked to have seen them a little bit more punchy, really. And I don't know why he thinks it's a good place for polo, but I don't know what that stick is. Whether it's a prod for other horses, maybe it's is it for rounding up the horses, or
I suspect it's to keep a bull away from you.
the bull. You think it's to keep the bull away, right? But it's a very interesting image anyway. But I just think that the two characters, I'm not sure that they add enough for me. I think that the sky and the land are the effective parts of this image, and I don't think that's what was intended particularly. Riders at Dawn. The title would suggest it's about the riders.
That one's mine, David.
I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that, Julie, but
I'll let you off just this once.
thank you.
I won't.
No. This is the penultimate one, Fireworks over the Clyde. So I think it's very well placed in this order of images that we're seeing tonight, that this should be the penultimate image, because we always have the fireworks towards the end. In fact, it looks, in view of what I've just said, that there'll be fireworks after this. Again, it's an issue of shutter speed, and to get enough lines of light from fireworks, you need that sort of shutter speed that gives the effect that you would see if you were there. And you've got this foreground, the bridge, the arches, the reflections in the water, and the landscape itself, setting the scene for this firework display. And I think that all in all, that is a pretty effective firework display image. And that's Fireworks Over the Clyde by
That's 8 guineas.
And so after the firework display, we called at the Old Keswickian for fish and chips. And there is this couple just wandering off down toward Lake Road with a bag of chips in their hand. And it's a perfect finale to this set of images, I think. This monochrome image of the fish and chip shop and Keswick Marketplace, I think it's a very suitable image to finish with. And it's the sort of image I can imagine will be in some sort of archive of life in Keswick in a few years' time. I think it's a very interesting evening picture to finish the night. And so there we are. That's the 60th image of the evening, Homeward Bound by...
Again, I think Richard Petty.
I've got a feeling it's Roland.
Oh, is it Rowan?
Is that yours, Roland? Anyway.
Oh,
Okay, so so I've made up my own rules for the best of, because I didn't see them written anywhere, and I thought so therefore I can make up my own rules. So I thought we would have, because there's been such a variety of images tonight, and so many of them are so good, I can't just make one best of. So I've decided we would have a best of land. And so the best landscape image of the night, I think, is this one, Wall Street After Dark, because it's just a stunning, stunning picture. And that's Alan Walker's, isn't it? Wall Street land. I know that it's got water in it, but it's the land that I like. And apart from that, I said I could make the rules up. The second one is a seascape, and this is my favorite seascape. It's got land in it as well, but we'll forget about the land and just look at Lulworth Cove with this beautiful light and this beautiful construction. And so Lulworth Cove is my favorite seascape.
that's Tom Stenhouse.
And that's Tom Stenhouse. The next is my favorite skyscape. It's a very distant sky, but I just thought it's phenomenal. And the fact that it was the only image that I looked at that sort of came alive as I was looking at it with these twinkling stars. And it's, I think it's stunning. And that is the Cygnus Wall by
Richard
Sneaking Suspicion.
Richard Jacobson.
So we have to have the best of everything else, pretty much. And so this has to be it. It's the tawny owl hunting at dusk. It's just a really, really stunning natural history image or nature image. It's so sharp and so interesting, and there's a story that goes with this, which I won't repeat now, but I just thought it was such a really, really good image. And that's
Again by Alan.
oh, that's Alan's as well.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that, folks. I didn't realize that I'd given him two. I suppose I could make my rules up and change that, couldn't I? And then there was my favorite people picture, and evening press, the very first image of the night. And I mean, just what an absolutely beautiful picture that is. I just think it's stunning. The tonal range through that, and the light on the face, the expression on the character, the overall construction of it. So that's my favorite people picture. And I've left it till last because that's my favorite picture of the night. So that's Joe Knight.
That's Joe Knight, yes. Well done, Joe.
There we are.